Hi, my name is Didier. We're at the lab over in Paris at la Maison du Whisky. We're with Daniele today. We're going to be talking about some wild and funky spirits.
Hi guys.
Okay, so Daniele, what do you consider, what's a wild spirit?
So it's interesting to speak about what wild spirit means because it's something that is already happening in food. It's already happening in beers, so the consumers in the last years are going to searching more and more the small producers, the focus on the raw material, and so in food everything there is a big movement on farm to table, so everybody is searching for the best ingredients, the best raw material, small producer and maybe organic, exactly.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference between organic and wild?
And organic and wild are two completely different concepts. Talking about wine, talking about food, talking about beers, what is organic is related to the agriculture.
Yeah, and kind of pesticides and
exactly,
chemicals.
no fertilizer, no pesticides. So organic is a concept related to the field, to the agriculture. Then in wines, for example, but also in many other ingredients, the transformation is not always, is not always clean. And talking about wines, for example, what happened in the cellar, in the transformation from the grape to the wine, there is, for example, the selected yeasts, and so there is some chemicals or some industrial process in what is the transformation.
So like in wine, for example, you have the natural wine movement.
Exactly.
In beer, we're going to have like the gozes in Belgium, which are wild ferments.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about fermentation. What we call wild is a from technical point of view, regards the fermentation. So wild fermentation means that these products and also these spirits are produced with a fermentation that is with airborne yeast or wild yeast, and this is exactly the expression of the raw material, expression of the terroir, is the maximum expression of the artisanal work of these small producers.
So when you say airborne yeast, it's like the yeast that are naturally present, kind of in the fields, in the wineries, in the.
Exactly, and using the airborne yeast or the wild yeast is really again the expression of any kind of terroir. Talking about a tomato, or talking about any kind of food, talking about wines, of course, and in this case talking about spirits. There are not yet many wild spirits, so spirits made starting from wild fermentation, but it's something that is developed in the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, and especially Verde is kind of one of the big players in that field.
Yeah, exactly, because we are really focused on the raw material in everything, and so we developed in the last years different categories, starting from mezcal, as many other companies, but exploring this wild concept in other kind of spirits,
notably rum. Okay, so why is this kind of concept of wild fermentations, wild spirits, why is it so important?
Well, in food is something that happened from all over Europe, all over the world, from let's say 10, 15 years. So when we say farm to table, is really an interest to have good food, to have a typical food for any regional or any small area, to give value of the typicity. Then the same people sometimes that have this attention regarding the food, then when switch to the beverage, so the choices of what drinking, that can be beer or wine or spirits, they don't have the same attention, or maybe they don't know that you can find also in beverage the same kind of approach.
That's true.
So it's important to be, not to be current necessarily, but to know. And so to know that there is the same attention for natural wines, for natural beers. We did the example of Cantillon, which is a very old and very known wild beer or natural beer. And in spirits is something that happened just in the few years, so it's very important to speak about that.
I mean, it's arriving in the market since a few years, but they've been making these products like this forever, right? I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, any natural product exists from thousands of years, not hundreds. So everything is conventional, or a new industrial or chemical product is just a matter of the last 50, 60 years. So it's not a new trend. It's just the normal way of production that in some way disappeared in the last 50 years.
We're kind of coming back to the original roots.
Coming back to the roots, exactly.
Okay, so the wild spirit, I guess, that most people are familiar with is mezcal. So here we've got a mezcal single palenque from Verde. And we talked about mezcal in the last episode, so if you want more info on how it's produced, on the artisanal and ancestral methods, you can go back to that video. But did you know in the same area, actually, of Mexico, they make rum as well?
Yeah, exactly. We started from mezcal because it's the most known wild spirit, of course. It's like 15 years that it's pretty famous new category. But it's interesting to know that if mezcal is the most known area is Oaxaca, but not only Oaxaca, but in the same state of Oaxaca, in the north, close to Veracruz, there is a lot of sugarcane, a lot of small producer producing just for the local consumption, and so Paranubes is just the first example of a natural Mexican sugarcane spirit. So it deserves really a visit. It's important to know that in October 2019, so just this month, Paranubes won at BCB Berlin, which is the biggest bar show in the world, won the best spirit. So it's an incredible sign that the world is already changing in this direction.
On the rum category, in a different area in Haiti, we've also got a new kind of trend going with the Clairin.
Yeah, it's 7 years now that we discovered Clairin. I say Velier, of course, Luca Gargano and me personally. We went in Haiti first time 7 years ago exactly to make a research on wild spirits related to sugarcane, and is incredible. In Haiti, Haiti is the only country in which there is still a production of wild sugarcane spirit. The name is Clairin. I'm sure you already heard about. Is just a local name in Creole of the sugarcane spirit. So Clairin means clear, so white.
So white rums. Yeah.
And there are hundreds, more than 500 small shops producing this sugarcane spirit that, as we said, is totally natural because is organic, and everything is organic in Haiti. So in Haiti, since everything is natural and everything is wild, the biodiversity is enormous. There are hundreds of different varieties of sugarcane, and they cut by hand, of course. And when they squeeze the juice, there is an explosion of the nature, and again is natural fermentation. So this is the main point. So a Clairin, like a Clairin of Monsieur Michel Sajous, it will be always different than a Clairin made even 5 kilometers from Sajous, because this is the biodiversity.
Clairin, actually, we have 3 different producers from different areas, and they all taste quite different. Is there kind of common tastes that you can associate with wild fermentation or wild yeasts?
I love to say no, because sugarcane are different, terroir are completely different. As for agave in mezcal, every sugarcane adapted itself to this specific terroir. So it's a never-ending number how many varietals there are. So since and also the yeasts in one village are completely different than in another village. So that's why it's difficult to find a common denominator in the taste. Yeah. For sure, the production is very similar, but the final tastes are completely different. So we have 3+1 that we launched last year, so 4 producers now, and it's crazy how they are different.
So next we're going to Capo Verde,
Groghe is a Capo Verde. Capo Verde is an archipelago, beautiful, 8 beautiful islands just out from Senegal, so in Atlantic Ocean. On 3 of these 8 islands there is just vegetation, and so it's volcanic, so vegetation and plantation of sugarcane. And also there they say more than 300 small producers. We started with Manuel Barbosa, and the process of production is pretty similar to Clairin. Yes, when you go in the past, in some way, there is always a common denominator in all these spirits, because they are all organic, they are all naturally fermented. So the ancestral process is pretty similar. So this is a Grogu, but in the terms of taste, it's very similar than any other Clairin.
It's the terroir that's going to make the difference. Finally, we're going to talk about Hamden, which is a Jamaican rum.
Yeah, Jamaica, in the north of Jamaica, in the state of Trelawney, Hampden is still produced in a wild way. So it's not juice, so it's not airborne yeast fermenting the juice. In this case, wild is pretty different, because they still produce very many different Hampden at Hampden, and so every formula they produce has a different raw material and wild fermentation to produce what they call a high ester. And
so actually we talked about the high ester rums in a previous
exactly.
video, so go back and check that if you want more info.
Yeah, exactly. To produce high ester rum, you have to do a very long fermentation, and very long fermentation only with wild yeast. So they have a sort of mother, let me say, and with this ancient process, they managed to produce different formulas in the same distillery, and so is 100% wild rum.
Thanks a lot, Daniele, for giving us all this info. If you want to like the page, feel free. Follow us to keep in touch, and a little question in the comments if you know the answer. These are all pure single rums. The question is, do you know what a pure single rum is, and what makes a rum pure single? All right, see you next time.
Be wild.
Be wild. Thanks, Daniele.